While we're talking about taxation and transparency, we do have a guest who's joining us all the way from the Federal Capital Territory. We have Ambassador Victor Udoh. He is the convener, Niger Delta Progressive Alliance, oil and gas expert commentator, who joins us now from our Abuja studios live. And we're going to be looking at 2025. Nigeria saw an all-time increased production rate. Not just that, according to OPEC, Nigeria surpassed its target production quota of 1.5 million barrels per day. Now, both OPEC and NNPCL had attributed this milestone to the peace and development in the Niger Delta region. Thank you so much for joining us, and good morning to you.
Good morning. It's a pleasure being here.
Great. We do have our in-house guest as well, but we'll come back to him before we wrap up the show. But let's just focus on this development, this progress. Can you bring us up to speed on the possibility of Nigeria meeting its quota? We do hear that it's been a challenging one, especially looking at the up and down, or better so you say, the unstable naira to dollar exchange rate. So what makes this possible?
The issues within the oil and gas must be understood from the paradigm of its functionality, its influence, and not too much on its dependence on too many variables, especially when you want to relate it to the issue of the stability of the naira and the forex itself. The successes in the oil and gas itself, it's a guarantee for the large-scale access of balance of trade at the international market that will help us have a better forex regime and will help us have a better stability. But I have interest in the statement you had made earlier before you asked the straight question that the meeting of OPEC quota and what is going on in the Niger Delta today is anchored relatively on the peaceful environment that has been restored significantly in the Niger Delta. It boils down to the fact that without peace, very little can be achieved. Without peace, much cannot be done. It therefore gives some thanks to the people of the Niger Delta for embracing peace. This peace was not embraced in an open vacuum. It was embraced because there is significant level of trust building now between operators in the Niger Delta, in the oil and gas sector, and the deliberate government policy from the PIA and the shift away from excess militarization of the region to what I refer to as non-conventional methods of addressing the issues of the Niger Delta. It goes to, for instance, the Ogoni crisis, the Ogoni agitations and Ogoni issues. And the federal government decided that they were going to come back for oil exploration in the Niger Delta of Ogoni axis. They did not bring more boots on ground. Rather, the president made a decent proposal of building a university in Ogoni land, involving the Ogoni people and having conversation with the Ogoni people. And that is pushing for the return of oil exploration in the Niger Delta of Ogoni axis. Then there is this also situation that has happened significantly in the Niger Delta. By the laws of Nigeria, as stipulated in the Constitution 1999 as amended, the armed forces of the Federal Republic are supposed to protect the critical national assets of this country, oil and gas inclusive. But at a point, it was discovered that it was not getting the needed result. Then the civil defense was fully drafted in to the protection of critical national assets, oil and gas being primary. And then it was working at some degree. Then all of a sudden, the federal government had a third-party engagement by bringing in surveillance company, private contracting companies to participate in the protection of critical national asset of oil and gas. And these companies, from the information available and from what we know as stakeholders in the Niger Delta today, these companies have done three things. Number one, they've expanded the inclusivity of the people of the Niger Delta and therefore building trust because the hitherto struggle of the Niger Delta was a consequence of mistrust between the people, the government, and the operators of the oil sectors. One, they built trust. Two, they went ahead to look at the day-to-day life of the Niger Delta people. Outside the books, what can we do to support, to give the Niger Delta people a better life? And then they came up with the issues of corporate social responsibility. Every company, every organization has a corporate social responsibility toward its host community. But what the oil and gas protecting companies, especially the one operating on the Trans-Niger pipeline, has done is that they have expanded the corporate social responsibility to the degree of making healthcare facility, education facilities, giving large-scale scholarship, empowering women at a very large number, and giving out support to people within the host community. And significantly, the reduction in the number of boots on ground, but inclusivity of more people on the table to participate on decisions and driving of the oil and gas activities in the Niger Delta, especially when it comes to the protection of pipelines. Because the shortfall in Nigerian oil, let me round this thought up. The shortfall or inability of the Nigerian state to meet its OPEC quota or produce sufficient oil that can better her economic process is not because there are no sufficient oil in the wells or in the creeks, but because there were always human interference, there was always sabotage, there were always vandalism. So the ability to bring vandalism to a halt, the ability to end human interference in the process of transporting oil, when you look at it from the upstream, midstream to downstream, human interference has always been responsible for our inability to meet our OPEC quota. The NNPC and the government pegging a budget at 1.84 for next year is built on the confidence that peace has returned to the Niger Delta significantly, and the human interference on pipelines in terms of vandalism or whatsoever has been brought to almost zero level, what we refer to as zero infractions in the oil and gas pipeline. This is evidence that as of last month, November thereabouts, we had 1.8 output, both the condiment and the actual crude itself. This continuation of this possibility is built on the premise that some persons have been able to get their acts together, and then what is happening is a major watershed. Having explained that, I am confident that with the spirit in the Niger Delta now, the calmness in the Niger Delta, the inclusivity of the people, and the participation of the people in the protection of the critical national assets of oil and gas, and lastly, the recognition and respect of the people, traditional rulers, host community committee chairmen, and youth leaders in the Niger Delta, occasioned by the private companies' involvement, is a guarantee that Nigeria will be able to meet its OPEC quota and meet the budget projection. Some of us are even thinking that we should be able to do 2 million and above from next year, because from what we have access to, there's relatively going to be zero or very minimal human interference. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Victor Udoh, just before we wrap up and let you go, news reaching us says the federal government has written off $1.42 billion and 5.57 trillion NNPC legacy debt to the Federation. I also want to know, it's been a few years since the PIA was signed into law, what compliance level is like, and how has it revolutionized the oil and gas sector in Nigeria?
If you can help us answer this maybe in a minute, we'll appreciate that.
Summarize that. What the PIA has done is that it has given some concession. Outside the 13% that were given to state government, 3% in the PIA goes to the core host community. This core host community support has resulted in massive cooperation with the government, And the stability in the Niger Delta, the guarantee that when you produce oil, it will get to either the terminal for export or it will get to the refineries for processing, refining, and it will get to the market, drives in a large-scale FDI, foreign direct investment. So whatsoever expenditure had been done in the aspect of making sure that the oil and gas flows as it should flow, in my mind, and to the belief of most people who want this country to progress, who wants to have a better nation, it's not out of place. What I mean is not that we don't want people to look at the books, we don't discredit auditing and all these things, but the federal government expenditure will be recovered through direct foreign investment and even local investment, because as it stands now, the Niger Delta region has come to a place where you can predict the predictability of the possibility of a quantity of oil that we can make as a result of the peace in the region. Then lastly, I want to make something very clear. Every nation has its particular problem. The structurally implementable strategy developed outside the box is what guarantees the pace and the possibility of resolving these problems. What we are seeing today in the Niger Delta, the oil and gas sector, and the protection of pipelines that guarantees that exploration, transportation, and eventual export or refining will happen was a deliberate thinking outside the box, using a non-conventional method to do what we refer to as a structurally implementable strategy of securing ourselves. And to us in the Niger Delta, this is excellent because it is not just about the figures, the government data, the export possibility. What about the environment? What about the degradations that occurs when oil is being spilled? When there is seizure of spillage, when there is stoppage of vandalism, you protect the environment, you restore the ecosystem, and you allow farmers to go to farm. You allow people who do fishing to go to fish. You allow other economic activities to happen in the Niger Delta. So the preservation and protection of pipelines in the Niger Delta and allowing the Niger Delta to remain peaceful is beyond the issues of just meeting OPEC quota, is beyond the issues of the federal government investment and what the federal government. In that note, I say that the PIA that has allowed for these reforms, that have allowed for this new input, that has allowed for this new thinking, it's a functional document. Its implementation, we will give it an assessment in the next 3-4 years. Because as of now, what we are seeing is a little bit appealing to us. So a critical and outright assessment may not be that very, very objective. Because if we talk now, it will look as if we're too excited about what the PIA has done, the reform it has allowed, bringing on private contractors to protect pipelines in the Niger Delta. So let's give it 2-3 years and see what will happen. And we'll take a critical look at the PIA functionality. We know there are people that are in supporters that are calling for 1 or 2 amendments, but you know that the laws of every nation continue to evolve as the need for the metamorphosis and the adjustment of the policies and program and the welfare of the people. It therefore says that what is happening in the Niger Delta today, the success story is a little bit beyond the naira and dollars and affects the environment and brings stability to our people. All right, Mr. Victor Udoh, thank you very much for speaking, to this issue, and we, completely see your perspective. I look forward to having further conversations with you. I look forward to seeing peace in the Niger Delta. Thank you for joining us to end the show today, because this is where we